don't know why. I've been getting these like weird spam texts about CBD oil. Yeah, right? Like I don't know why. And they seem like they're addressed to somebody that's not me, so I have no idea what the hell is happening. Anyway,
I've never had that happen to me. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Adcast, a podcast for the study of modern visual culture. I'm your brand new animal, Renu.
and I'm your Tower of God, Soup.
Wow.
Yeah. I I was writing the document for this week, right? And I was like, let's see. We have BNA and Tower of God and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Brand new animal works pretty well.
Yeah.
As like a thing. And then I was like, but nothing else really does. So I guess I'll be your Tower of God. I mean, I could have been your Villainess, but like I think that was the sampler one. I think it was the Villainess. So
You could have been a tower of soup.
I could have been a Tower of Soup. I am a Tower of Soup.
You
What
are
is
a
a
tower
human
of
being if not a Tower of Soup? Yeah.
Anyway, this week AT stands for Absolute Territory because we'll be wrapping up the spring 2020 season.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird one, cause like half of the anime that they said would come out this season didn't, cause it couldn't, and
it came out and then it stopped.
yeah, I will say this, it's kind of one of the strange things is it does reveal just how like odd anime production is, and that they just kind of like release it week by week,
Right.
and obviously like this is the case for manga, but you never really think about how that is the case for anime as well. Like they probably have like 1 or 2 weeks advance, and that's kind of it. Hence we got like 2 episodes of Fugo Keiji and then nothing else for a long time. So yeah, it has been a bit of a weird one, and we didn't watch like a ton. We kind of just stuck with what we liked, and there was, I don't know, it was kind of a quiet season with like a couple standouts, and I next season is gonna be even like sparser.
That's what
like
I was gonna say.
we looked through the seasonal stuff, and obviously if you're a patron, you can go watch that trailer watch, but like we were just like, oh, is that all the anime coming out this season? There's really not a lot.
A lot of it was ecchi stuff. Like, those guys will never stop.
Oh, no, the power of horny will never stop. Yeah. There's definitely like at least one show that's like borderline hentai for sure. That is on the kind of like Ishizoku reviewer spectrum. So.
Right.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. So why don't we catch up first? It's been it's been a little while. It has been a little while.
Yeah. Let's see. I have been looking at houses to move to because our current living situation is going to end soon because our landlord is unable to renew our lease because her son is unemployed and unable to afford rent at his current place anymore, so she's gonna give him our place and we're gonna get out of here.
I see. Man, it really does put into perspective what it's like to own land, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks.
So, yeah, we'll be finding a new place to rent, and in the meantime, trying to sift through a lot of, like, false posts and stuff, like scam posts, too, like that the kind of stuff that you would get like on Craigslist or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that. Sometimes they pop up on Zillow too, and that's wild. We've been taken on a wild goose chase before on that because of that
yeah.
last time that we went to go look for a place. So that's been fun. My roommate has taken it upon himself to send a selfie of him flipping someone off because of their last scam attempt.
Wow, that
to...
sounds so yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that checks.
Yeah, no, it's because they were like trying to get information, like government ID information out of him, in order to secure just a basic house tour, which really threw us for a loop because we had already been to see like half a dozen properties this week, and so to have this one in particular, really stressed that we needed to provide different forms of identification, yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just seemed very suspicious,
Right.
and so yeah, there were just like a lot of red flags, and so we had to,
I see.
yeah, it's like that, it'd be like that.
Yeah. You know, I don't envy anybody who has to try and find housing. I know a couple of people. I actually know quite a lot of people right now who are or have been in the last couple months been attempting to find housing, and it sounds hellish.
Oh yeah,
like worse than normal, really.
yeah.
And it was already pretty bad. So I don't envy your situation at all, but I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. We have until September, so we'll see.
Yeah. Speaking of, like, I'm moving pretty soon too. Actually,
Oh yeah.
I am kind of moving out of the place that I have been living in for the last I don't know, boy, I mean, what age do you go to preschool at? Because that's how long I've been in this house.
Oh my god, dude.
But yeah, we're moving out here because my dad has kind of taken a look at his life, and he's realized, you know what, I'm done working. I've been working like 3 or 4 jobs for the last 30 years. I'm gonna do one, maybe 2. So
wait,
he's
what?
Yeah.
Wait, he's been working 3 to 4 jobs simultaneously?
I mean, yes. Basically so he's been working he obviously has his day job, but he has a quote unquote side job as a realtor, but then the person in charge of his real estate company died of a heart attack at 50.
Oh.
So my dad got his broker's license and became the president of the company.
Okay.
And then all the while he does kind of because he has his realtor's license. He's been managing property, which includes the one that we live on, which is an apartment complex. And so he's kind of the go-to in between the company that owns the complex and everybody who lives in it. So he's been doing that for 20 odd years. And then he's realized over the course of this pandemic that boy, that sucks. So anyway, my dad has finally made the house that that he has bought to retire to livable, so he's going to live in it now.
Wow.
And he's whisking me away with him as well, because not only is it quite difficult to find a place to live, it's quite difficult to find a job, especially here in California, where it is impossible to find a job with enough money to live. It's a whole thing. But yeah, so that's kind of in my future too. It's really funny. And some of my friends have also just graduated college too, so they're obviously kind of staying with their parents now and thinking about maybe looking for housing outside. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, summer tends to be like that, right? I feel like.
Yeah,
graduate,
definitely.
yada yada.
I actually wonder if a majority of housing turnover happens in summertime, because you have all the college kids that have to get out of their places and look for new places, and then you have all the people who just graduated college looking for places to live. And then if you just follow like a yearly lease cycle, like, you know, you just renew it every summer. So I wonder. Anyway, what else have you been up to?
Not a whole lot. Today we had a breakthrough with one of our stray cats.
Oh?
She has really hated these other 2 stray kittens that we have. And today, she laid on them. Like, all cuddle-like, and we took pictures of it like a goddamn photo shoot, like proud parents.
Oh. That's adorable.
It took, like, weeks, but she's finally warmed up to them, which is so sweet.
Oh. I'm surprised that I have no idea how big your living situation is, but I cannot imagine that it's actually big enough to fit like 7 cats.
We've been doing okay. Like it does feel like, you know, there's a lot of cats around, but because we're in a house situation like that, it gets spread out well enough.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's fair. Like
yeah.
you're not in like a 2-bedroom apartment.
Exactly. So we could have like 1 to 2 cats in each room, and it wouldn't feel very crowded, you know, because
Right. Yeah.
we've got enough of a spread to make sure the cats are comfortable to roam around.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also the fact that they can go in the backyard too, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That is nice.
Yeah. I mean, that's it, man. Just house hunting and cats.
Yeah. Life as it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about you? Aside from your housing situation.
Yeah, well, this is kind of weird. So like this episode probably would have gone up like a week or 2 or 3 even ago. Maybe not 3 weeks ago, but like it would have gone up earlier, but I was actually taking a trip to Oregon to see my partner before things got like really crazy. And boy, is it just not fun to travel right now at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like as big of a deal for me because like obviously I have the luxury of choosing what day to fly. So obviously I'm choosing like the least populated day to fly, which is, you know, Monday. And that really helps a lot because there's like you know, 1 person per row on the plane, but it's still like a little bit like, you know, you hope everyone is wearing their mask, you hope everyone is following the rules, you hope nobody's like doing something dumb. I mean, in the first place, like traveling at this kind of current moment in the continental United States is not an advisable thing to do, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do, right? So yeah, I went on a trip to Oregon to see my partner. They got a cat, a little kitty cat.
Yeah.
And that cat has become the light of my life. And,
yes.
You've seen many. I've sent many pictures in the group chat about young Philip, my son.
Philip.
I love him so much, even though I'm like literally looking down at my pants right now, and the drawstrings like just have holes in them, because he loved to play with them.
Oh.
But he's so big. He's so big. He's like 4 months old now, right? He's like coming up on 4 months old, and he's like probably almost 5 pounds.
Oh my god, dude.
He's a large. Like he's not like a chunky fat boy either. Like he's just big. Like genetically large, you know?
Big orange boy.
Big orange boy. Anyway, I love Philip so much, even though I look down at my hands right now and I still have like recovering wounds from when I was trying to ferry this cat across Okay, so we went to a beach basically, and this is at some point we took Philip out on an adventure to the beach, and our plan was we would just like sit somewhere away from other human beings and have a nice little picnic with Philip. He was very stressed out the whole time. It's a new environment. But actually what made it much worse was we drove for like an hour and a half to a less populated beach, and we passed many signs in rural Oregon that were calling for the governor of Oregon to be I'm gonna say dethroned. Because the governor of Oregon, I think her name is Kate Brown, is who they're basically like saying like is like mandating people wear masks, because of course, right? Like you
Right.
should, you have to follow the federal guidelines. I say federal guidelines. There's no federal guidelines. You've got to follow safety protocol that the rest of the world agrees is a good idea. And when you don't believe in that, you're gonna get mad because
Yeah.
you're like, this is fascism. Meanwhile, we're ignoring the part of Portland where like secret police are kidnapping protesters. But anyway, that's the state of America right now, and holy shit, it's actually horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we went to this beach, and what made it very difficult for young Philip to get kind of acquainted with the beach, because we were expecting kind of like a quiet beach outing. But my God, so many people drove their cars onto the beach, like onto the sand of the beach.
Oh,
like that's just a thing that people were doing, and
wow.
I swear to God, every 1 in 3, and one would come every like 3 or so minutes, right? But 1 in every 3 got stuck in the sand. When we got there was a car stuck and like 2 different families trying to push it out of the sand. And there were cars coming by, and they were like, yeah, I got you. And like they would like tow it a little bit, and like it was just revving engines all day long.
Oh my God, why?
Every time we saw a car pass, we were like, is this one gonna get stuck? Is this one gonna get stuck? Is this one gonna get stuck?
Why can't they just hang out on the beach without their vehicles?
I presume it's because they couldn't find a convenient enough parking and they didn't want to walk. And that's just how America is. We just don't give a shit about anyone else.
No, what? That's just the thing that you do when you go to the beach. Parking sucks, and sometimes you have to walk a long time to get to the beach. That's just the thing that you have to deal with. That doesn't mean that you get free reign to drive your car onto the beach and get it stuck in the sand. Oh my God.
Apparently, and this was foreign to me, right? Because like I've never seen this. I've never seen a car on a beach except for like maybe like an emergency vehicle.
Me too, right?
And we just realized this might just be like an Oregon thing. Maybe they just do that up here. So
I've never seen that before.
Oh yeah, me neither. It was wild, and seeing the cars get stuck, I was like, well, of course you're gonna get stuck. Like, what did you expect?
Right, exactly. What did you expect?
Oh, so that was interesting. But anyway, it made getting Philip back to our car very hard, because the cars kept coming, and every time a car would pass, it would set us back like 5 minutes, because he'd be like, car. I'd be like, it's okay, Philip. Every time I try to pick him up, he'd like claw my fucking arm off. So it was a bit of a struggle. Like the closer we got to, oh my God, this is the worst. So we got to this like very close to the car. My partner was like, okay, I'll go to the car and I'll get the air conditioner going so that, Philip doesn't freak the fuck out. And get like overheated or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I can get Philip back to the car. And the answer was I couldn't, because what happened was like we got to this like intersection where somebody obviously had a house there, and there were 4 cars in the like garage, and at that moment they all chose to leave. And so Philip hid under a bush and just refused to come out, and I was like,
oh no,
this is and eventually it took so long, because like every time I tried to pick him up, he'd just like squirm out of the way immediately, and I was like, I don't want to like and we forgot to bring his carrier too, so it was like there was no easier way to do this. So anyway, eventually my partner just kind of drives up, and I toss Philip in the window.
Oh my God,
I'm like, please take them, please take the son, please take my son, please take the boy.
God.
So that was a moment of I'm gonna say great excitement in the course of that trip. Anyway, I got back Monday, and I've just kind of been inside since then, quarantining myself like a good responsible adult human being. Normally my grandparents come on like Thursdays to make sure that everything's like, you know, clean and everything is laundered, because normally they do that, but you know, basically I was like, yeah, you don't have to come this week, because I'm like, I don't feel sick any more than normal. That is, I always feel a little bit ill. um but it's better to be safe than sorry, especially because, you know, younger people can oftentimes be asymptomatic, and you know,
Yeah.
you just want to be safe. You don't want to be the one that killed grandmammy.
Obviously.
Yeah, that's a guilt you would carry for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been inside. I will be inside for the next, like, you know, 2 or so weeks. I'll probably have to leave to go grocery shopping at some point, but you know, you wear a mask. So yeah. Other than that, I've been doing some writing, obviously. I've been doing some work, whatever little I have. But even that is proving to be quite a lot, because like it's just hard to get work done when everything is on fire. Um, Aside from that, I started playing a new gacha game, which is always a mistake, but
That is a mistake.
yeah. So I started playing Sinnoh Alice, which is a mobile game that is directed by Yoko Taro. So of course I started playing it, and
Oh, I see.
um it's basically like it's kind of a classic, like we're gonna make anime fairy tales kind of thing, except it's Yoko Taro and a bunch of people who developed the game and actually wrote most of it are like also fans of Yoko Taro, so all of it is like really like really fucked up. um
Okay.
I have some thoughts about it, because there is some, I'm gonna say, vaguely problematic content, but not in a way that anybody who isn't like trans could understand, right? Because there is a trans character in Sinnoh Alice, but the thematically just not handled like ideally. I mean, I personally really like the character. There are some problems with the way that the character's themes are framed, and even though they're not directly related to like the transness necessarily, it's still kind of a bit of an issue. But you know, that's neither here nor there.
Hmm.
Sinnoh Alice is very interesting. It's basically like kind of like Granblue, but not, because most of what you do in the game is you just build your weapon grid, and I'm like, oh, I've been through this song and dance. I know what this is like.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very pretty, actually. Like the writing is fairly decent overall. The music is really great. The art style is really kind of neat, and there's a Nier Automata collaboration going on, so you can
Of
get
course.
2B in the game. So of course that's why I
Mm-hmm.
started playing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but now you know, I guess I'm just playing this game. I don't know how long I'll be playing the game for, but I'm playing this game.
What
Um,
kind of gameplay does it have?
it's kind of it's a little bit weird, where you essentially build a grid of weapons, and then they just show up randomly, like you're drawing like cards from a deck, and then you just tap which one you want to use, and it uses it, and then it uses like this resource called SP that will regenerate gradually over time. So basically it's like a real-time-esque battle, like an RPG, but you know, there's like kind of a more real-time spin to it than just like turn-based.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and there are some interesting things that it does, like mechanically. There's some things I don't like about it mechanically, but I mean, overall it's kind of a fun time. It's one of those
Okay.
like slow build games for sure. Like, this game really kind of requires you to build your power gradually over time. Like, you can spike it from day to day, but you will, especially if you're not like paying money to roll the gacha, you will very quickly hit like the cap of the power that you can attain.
Mm-hmm.
Um Especially if you, like many people, were saving for the Nier Automata gacha, because most of your power comes from the gacha, and most of your power comes from being able to have like weapons that fit your class and that suit your stats, etc, etc, etc. Most of your stats
Mm-hmm.
come from your weapons. So yeah, it's would I recommend anybody plays it? No, not really. I mean, yes, but also no. Like, yes, in the way that it's a fun game, and if you have like nothing else going on, if you like Nier Automata, if you kind of like what it would look like if like a Yoko Taro-esque team wrote fairy tales, all of that, you know, if you like the art style, obviously like go for it. But no, in the fact that it's a gacha game and you should never play any gacha games, right? Like they'll ruin your life. It's really just not worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been having a good time with that, honestly.
Okay.
One of the nice things about Alice is one of the nice and terrible things is that they have a daily PvP event, which is where some of your kind of progression comes from. So it really heavily encourages you to join a guild. For a little while, I was playing in a solo guild, which is hilarious because there is a mechanic in the PvP that just any attack has a small chance of just one-shotting you and just killing you instantly. So even if you have 8,000 more stats than every other person on the enemy team, they could just kill you in one shot. So it's like, so I mean, it's an incentive to build for or to form groups, but it's really funny because it's like if you were fighting a bunch of ants, but every one in like 20 ants pull a gun on you at random, just like it's gun time, and then
I
you're
don't
just
know
like,
how
I
I
guess
feel
I'm
about
dead.
that.
So anyway, I've since left my solo guild because nobody was joining and I was sad. And just joined a different guild. And I will say that there are some annoyances I have with the PvP system. Namely how like easy it is to like revive your kind of fallen allies, because it's like very difficult when you're alone. But like you can just heal them from 0, which is like means they can just keep popping back up, and you're like, well, what's the point of but overall it's like honestly pretty fun, and it like really kind of encourages like guild unity or whatever. If I could convince my Grand Blue guild, what is left of it, at any rate to play, I would, but they don't seem that interested, but that's okay. um But yeah, so Alice, it's okay. You know, it's pretty fun. It's a little arcane. Like it's a little bit obtuse in how it works. Like you really have to kind of dig into how the mechanics of it work. But like I learned how to play Grand Blue Fantasy, so everything else is child's play.
Child's play. You're a little baby.
Yeah, you were like little baby. Well, I mean, when you get into like Grand Blue, it's like okay, so there are weapon skills that increase your power by a set percentage, and then there are summons that increase those percentages by a certain percentage. It's just math. It's just math. Okay. You're like, what is the optimal breakpoint for my weapon grid, etc., etc., etc. So. Yeah, Grand Blue is releasing summer characters too, and I don't know. I'm honestly for Grand Blue, I'm just waiting until the summer event starts, like their like free campaign where they give away a bunch of draws, because it's, you know, that's the fun, exciting stuff when you get free things. But they won't have their live stream until like the 8th of August. I don't remember if it was that late last year, but I'm sure that you know, global pandemic has something to do with it. Yeah. So. Yeah, so that is everything that I've been up to. I don't know. I've just been playing a lot of video games. And being sleepy. I probably should. Yeah. Anyway, I probably should like try and wean myself off of caffeine for a little bit. That would probably be healthy. Best for me. I just need to get some work done first, which is what I always say.
That is what you always say.
Well, yeah, it always, like, my caffeine intake always cranks up around the time I need to, like, do work, and then it always, like, drops a little bit after, but it means I have to spend, like, 3 days asleep, which is just, like, you're just like, I wasted 3 days doing nothing. So, whatever. Anyway, let's talk about anime.
Alright.
First thing on the docket, let's talk about Fruits Basket Season 2. Furuba. Man, things are really getting dramatic in Fruits Basket, huh?
How about that?
How about that? Yeah. You know, it's funny because, like, Fruits Basket has basically just kind of been constantly coming out for the last, like, 3 seasons because, like, it's, there's 2 seasons. We're in the second one, but each season goes for 2 quarters, so it's like
Yeah.
one season per like 12 episodes or whatever, and we're on the like 4th one now. So
Mm-hmm.
sorry, it just keeps going, and yeah, I mean it's as good as it is gonna be. Like it's Fruits Basket. It is as like angsty and dramatic as you kind of want it to be, right? I don't know if this was your experience when you were kind of like experiencing Fruits Basket for the first time, but you're just like, oh, this is cathartic in a way that I don't understand.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because when you think about Fruits Basket, just like, just think about the series in general, you don't really immediately think of the angst and the drama or whatever, because you think about how fluffy it is and like cute animal people.
That's
uh,
true. That's true. There's definitely
yeah.
there must be like a kind of like female oriented equivalent of like moe, right? Or maybe it's just moe. Maybe they just use it like that. But yeah, no, you're right. There's like a certain moe factor to the way that Fruits Basket is perceived, where it's like, Zodiac, hijinks with funny animal boys, and then
Right.
like you get to episode like 40, and it's just like, will you recreate the violence you experienced in the household onto others? You're like, what the shit? Excuse me? I wasn't ready.
You're like, you get to each Zodiac character and you're like, what trauma did you go through in your background?
Yeah.
What are we gonna uncover today?
I will say I actually really like the kind of framing of Fruits Basket. And this is obviously something that like I don't remember most of Fruits Basket the first time I watched. I was probably like 12.
Mm-hmm.
So, nothing really stuck at that point. But like I like really didn't, you know, understand anything that was happening. And now as an adult I'm watching back, I'm like, "Oh, it's about like the cycle of abuse."
Yeah.
You're like,
Yep.
"Ah, I see." I
Eee.
see. Ah, they, and then the like framing of the Zodiac as like a dramatic device for how each of these characters has like their own personal trauma and drama is like really interesting. Like obviously you have um Yuki, who's just like, yeah, I'm like the mouse, so I'm like afraid and I will never stand up for myself. I'll just like keep running away to like save myself. And
Right.
there's the uh I mean they're all like that, right?
Yeah.
Obviously the most obvious one being Kyo with like, yeah, I was the one who was left out of the Zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
I'm shunned and cursed by my supposed family. But yeah, I still really like Fruits Basket, and I
Yeah.
I will, I think, continue to enjoy the way that it frames family as not just being something that is about blood, but about
Yeah.
how you form relationships with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I will say there is one like just one glaring issue, right? That we have come to notice, which is there is a lot of really unhealthily large age gap like pining. And this is obviously something that you don't really consider when you're like 14. You're like, yeah, like hot mature men, they're so dreamy. But like, when you get into your 20s, you're like, oh my god, what
You
are
are
you
a child going after
doing?
an adult, and this adult is going after a child. This is not okay.
Like there is, there on at least like 3 or 4 occasions there's like somebody who's like, this man, I love him, I wish I could be with him. And you're like, girl, you are 9 years younger than that man. That would be so bad for both of you.
Like, it becomes a lot less of an issue when you're both like older adults, right? Because you're basically in the same life stage.
Right,
But
you
when
have
one
to
of
be in
you
the
is in
same like in this on the
right,
same level of like power,
exactly,
right?
right, and there's a really uneven power dynamic between a high school student and a career adult. It's just different.
It's yeah, and obviously that's something that like you just like don't inherently understand as somebody who's like not an adult yet, right?
Right.
You're just like, what's the difference? Like I'm a fully mature human being. You are not a fully mature human being.
No.
No, um, but like I and this is the kind of thing, right? Where it's I noticed that even people who kind of like theoretically should know better find themselves being suckered into these kinds of relationships anyway. And that's kind of a big thing that's like coming out right now with, people who are like Twitch streamers, right? And the kind of power dynamic that is being abused there, and especially, doubly so when it's like minors, when they're kind of impressionable. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of, and this is why it's kind of important to like point out that it's kind of an issue, right, in the fiction, because it normalizes this behavior for people who otherwise like should know better and should not, be. Because, like, if you can point to, like, it's Fruits Basket, everybody loves Fruits Basket, right? Like, that guy is 9 years older than her, but it's fine because they love each other, and that's all that matters. And it's like, no, that's really not all that matters. There's actually a lot more here.
Yeah, and I feel like Fruits Basket, it I mean, we can say that it's a product of its time and whatnot, but it does leave some exploration in those kinds of dynamics pretty shallowly. Like, it just assumes that once these people get together, it's happy ending.
Right,
Uh,
yeah.
if it's a relationship that is broken up, it was broken up before the series started, and now they're recovering from it as part of their trauma, like Hattori is.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very a marker of, like, of anime and manga of its time, though, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
But,
yeah. Like
yeah.
in Marmalade Boy, one of the characters in there is a high school girl who ends up with her male teacher,
Yeah,
and
Jesus
they run
Christ.
away and they elope, and it's like,
Oh, Jesus.
oh, oh.
I actually went to a high school where it was rumored that one of the teachers did that. It's a rumor, I'm unsubstantiated, but like, you
Yeah.
just hear that and you're like, ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I
Ooh.
will say that they did do a lot of writing in terms of showing like how not okay the teacher was with the whole idea of her being in love with him and yada yada yada. Like there was that whole thing, and they did. I think she either waited until she graduated or she dropped out. I can't remember, but basically until she was of age, quote
Yeah.
unquote. That they
Yeah.
went and
I
did
mean,
that, but yeah, it's not.
there's kind of obviously a level of like, there is a differentiation between, fiction and reality, and when
Yeah.
things are like uh when things are kind of like wish fulfillment or whatever, or that kind of stuff, like if it's just like high school girl thinks, adult man is nice and attractive and cool, right? That's fine. That's just how people are. Like they'll do that. It's like when it's reciprocated that it becomes kind of an issue, because you're like, oh no. And the issue here is not with like the idea of like, well, like, you should let people write fiction how they want to, and let it be whatever they want to, because you don't know their situation. Maybe they're like working through their own trauma, right? But like there's a difference between doing that in like kind of a personal project and like a commercial manga, right? Where the level of engagement there is so different, and the level of normalization is so different, because there's an obvious difference between somebody who is like, I I put my workout in adult spaces for adults to consume for their own like
Mm.
kind of,
Mm-hmm.
satisfaction or whatever. And like this is a manga that is like aimed at primarily high school girls, and if they see that
Right.
kind of behavior and they see that as like normal, then it can, obviously kind of, I'm not gonna say it's
Right.
going to like be the thing that leads to it, but like, can't count it out.
Right. I do think that there is an argument to be made in terms of, oh, they ought to know better to tell fiction from reality. Like that's just the thing that you need to be able to know as you grow up and as you consume media. Like not everything that you consume is realistic to how things should be in real life. But
Yeah,
it
yeah.
that also does come with maturity. And if you are still technically a child and you haven't completely formed those sensibilities yet, and you're having certain media catered to you that normalizes certain things, you might not realize how abnormal those things are. So
Right,
there's a
exactly.
careful balance to be struck there.
Yeah. So certainly, like, to be fair, a product of its time, but also like, like, come on, like, how and this might just be like me, but how on earth could a 25-year-old man look at a 16-year-old girl and just be like, oh yeah, that is someone I could love? I would look at a 16-year-old now and I would be like, that's a fucking child.
That is a child.
That is a fucking child. This is I don't want to interact with this child. I hate children.
Oh my god. Oh, here we go.
I don't want to interact with children.
Here we go.
And I swear, like, and like, this is kind of funny because, like, I don't know what it is, right? But, like, I've always kind of felt that way about, I just don't, everybody younger than me is a child, right? Like,
right.
I have friends that are dating people, like, 2 to 3 years younger than them, right? And even when you get to 3 years younger at, like, 23, I'm like, hold on, let's take a step back. Let's think about this, right? And it's like, maybe at that point, like, when you're in college, you're 23, it's like, it's a little bit less icky than if you were like a high school senior and like someone younger than that but like, still, just kind of, to me, it's like, I would rather just date somebody who is certainly in my, like, maturity range,
right,
in my age range, and
right,
like, I tend to find that I wouldn't go like more than a year younger than me. So.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I never have, so I don't know. I can certainly tell you I've never met anybody like more than a year younger than me that'd be like, oh yeah, cool. No, I would just be like, who's this fucking sassy lost child?
Oh my god, dude.
Maybe we can, like, come back to this discussion when I'm like 25, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think at that point you will have interacted with people who will be a couple years older or younger than you, and they'll just be in your social circle normally. You know? Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's just fucking wild. 9 years is so 9 years is so
9 years
long.
is a long time.
Like, that is
I'm not saying that it's an impossible thing and that it hasn't happened before in our human history, because of course it has. And it's not like it's impossible to make it work, but it is. There's a lot of things going against it. In particular, that one of them is just has been through a lot more than the other, and what do they talk about? You know?
I want to, yeah, right. I don't know what I would talk about with somebody who is 16. Like, we would just run out of things, right? Like, this is how I feel when I talk to children. I'm just like, so, you've been, watching, like, I'm talking to someone who's 16, right? I'm just like, so you've been watching, like, Peppa Pig or what?
No! Stop!
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just like, why? Why? Like, to put this into perspective, right? I think the average lifespan of somebody in the United States is like 80 years, right? So, like, 9 years is a ninth of that, basically. That is a ninth of a person's lifespan. Like, you know? Anyway, so Fruits Basket, as fruits
we're
and
old.
as basket as it has always been. Yeah. So that's
it's a great show.
Wild.
Anyway,
it is a great show. And luckily, those age gaps are not exacerbated in any meaningful way, as far as I remember and have seen. Maybe I'm wrong, actually. Oh no, I'm gonna be wrong, aren't I? I'm gonna be fucking. I'm gonna be fucking Usagi dropped. This is what's happening.
No, it'll be okay.
Curses! I never
Don't
read the manga for
worry.
Fruits Basket. I don't know how it ends.
I did. It's fine. It doesn't
Oh, thank
do
Jesus.
the bads or whatever, like go in a
You
really
know,
weird perverse
I will say
direction.
this, like, I think that there is, like, an amount of dramatic tension you could draw from that, of, like, you know, like, oh, yeah, if we were but also, like, no. No, no, no. Nope. Nope, I've changed my mind, I don't like it. Because I was like, I mean, if you were writing that kind of story, you could, like, no. Yikes. Okay, let's talk about the next one. Let's talk about BNA. So BNA, Brand New Animal, is the new Studio Trigger show, and
Yeah.
boy, is it a doozy. Boy,
Boy.
is it a doozy. So
Boy.
this is interesting, because normally when somebody proposes a furry show, right? Let's not mince words here. It's a furry show. You know, BNA and Beastars are furry shows. Netflix just really gunning for that furry demographic.
It was really, yeah, yep.
But like when you have furry shows, right? You will tend to trend in one or like one of two directions, which is you will either explore what it would be like to live in a society of animal people, which is what Beastars does, or you will attempt to make some kind of allegory for racial prejudice, which is what BNA does, or you will just get lost and do something in between to horrible effect, like Zootopia does.
Oh.
So here's the thing, right? Is
okay.
that BNA absolutely slaps.
Okay. It slaps.
Yeah, BNA absolutely slaps, but the central kind of thing I wanted to talk about with BNA is that the racial allegory in this anime does not suck outright, which is kind of wild.
That is really what threw me for a loop. Was I wasn't even expecting racial allegory in the show, because you go in thinking it's Studio Trigger, yeah, and then suddenly they have a whole episode about it, and you're like, what on earth? I haven't even seen like such a sensitive take on this before.
Right. Not only is the whole show kind of permeated in like what is it like in kind of this air of like exploring what racial prejudice and that kind of stuff is like. It has episodes dedicated to it in a way that is like way subtler than people realize, right?
Yeah.
So there is an entire episode that is dedicated to when Michiru and like Michiru makes friends with the like daughter of the like mob boss in town.
Yeah.
And she realizes that she can transform into her human form for a little while. So they like basically sneak out and go into the city and go to a party, and my god. So and I'm almost certain that we talked about this in the like sampler, but like it's worth talking about again, where like the entire episode is dedicated to like they go to a party where the humans are having a Beast Man party where they're all wearing like animal masks, quote unquote. And there's your kind of first thing, right, where you're like, okay. Sure. And when they
outwardly seem very pro Beast people.
Right.
They're like, yeah, Beast people are the greatest. Yeah, woohoo.
Yeah, they don't deserve this oppression, etc.
Yeah.
etc. And then when they realize that the dolphin girl is a beast person, they're like they don't turn on her necessarily. They say, "Oh, it's so brave of you to be here. It's so, your existence is so brave, and we're so proud of you for coming to this party, and we really want to honor and make sure that you're special, and etc etc etc." And then they lock her in a cage because they don't understand what she needs, which is air, and they're like, "But she's a beast, man. She needs the water." And all in all, the whole episode is this like amazing like shot on glimpse of what it's like to live as a minority in somewhere like, you know, America, or perhaps even, you know, Japan, right? Where And I will say this is much more prominent in America, where people have this kind of like overcorrection for treating like racial minorities, where they will essentially center the conversation around themselves. They will talk over people. They will not listen to what they have to say. Like, it's much more this kind of performative
It is very
allyship,
performative. Yes.
right? And that's not what I was expecting from my seasonal anime this
Right.
season.
Yeah.
And I saw that episode, and I initially, right, like, I only knew that the show was like kind of about this because my friend Brandon, who you might remember from the Sherlock episode,
Yeah.
told me about it. It was like, have you seen episode 4 yet? And I was like, no, I haven't. He was like, oh. And my my god. Like, here's the thing, right? Is that BNA has it avoids a couple of pitfalls. One which is where certain shows that talk about this like kind of animal racial allegory can have some issues, right? Where it's like there's so many shows that get it wrong, right? And there's obviously, like I mentioned, Zootopia all the fucking time. Like, I mean, come on, she becomes a cop. But like it gets confusing because they don't know where to draw the line between them being animal people and between real people, and as a result, you, the audience, gets confused. So when you have like, the main villain of Zootopia be like, well, I was doing this because I'm afraid that the carnivores will eat us, because it is their biological impulse, that feeds into some kind of nasty ideas about what racial relationships are like, right? It's basically like saying, well, you see, I'm going to have to get rid of the racial minorities because if I don't, they will kill us. Which is, to put it quite lightly, what people actually believe in the United States of America right now. So like, there's a lot of issues that crop up around when you get into biological essentialism, and when you try to tie that into your racial allegory, when there's actually like no real one-to-one for that in real life. We made a race up. That's a thing that we invented, right? But like, when you bring in animal people, there is a biological difference between someone who is a lion and someone who is a rooster. And the way BNA gets around it is they're just like, we just don't give a shit about that.
Right.
So like, that part doesn't matter, right? It's like, there's beastmen and there's humans, and sure, there are biological differences between us. But that's not why we're being persecuted. We're just being persecuted because the humans need somebody to persecute. And
yeah.
Then there's like this kind of like, and they basically pull the like promare again, where they're like, the final villain is, and it gets, holy shit, I'm just remembering it now, but the final episode gets so Studio Trigger so fast.
Yeah.
They're like,
yep.
because they start from like, I was orchestrating this all along because I believe in racial purity and kind of whatever, genetic superiority, etc., etc., etc. The kind of like eugenics stuff. And
yes.
Then he starts firing laser beams, and he's got 3 heads, and he's a dog. It's like, whoa, this went so, this ramped up so fast. And for sure, there are some complications when you do introduce like antagonists that are of a marginalized class, right? Especially when it's your primary final antagonist. But what you kind of realize is, like, one, like, no racial allegory will ever really be perfect. That's just kind of how it is, right?
Right.
2, there is a kind of like level of this, and Promare does this too, right? Is that there are people who are so there's a saying that is skin is not kin, right? Where there are people who will actively work in like spite of the best interest of marginalized people, even though they belong to a marginalized class, because it will help them personally get ahead, right? They have their own agendas, right? And to be perfectly honest, I really can't look at that and say well, that's not realistic. That's bad. That promotes that promotes tribalism or whatever. I can't do that because those people exist in our country and our world and in our government as we are speaking right now, right? BNA is not very subtle. It's very on the nose about a lot of things, as Studio Trigger tends to be. It is quite subtle about some other things, like that episode about performative allyship. But there is quite a lot of it that is, Studio Trigger. It's very on the nose, oh, I see. But yeah, there's this and it's, you'll have to excuse me, it's been a little bit while since we finished this. It has been it's there's kind of certainly talk about that kind of genetic stuff, which I don't think necessarily boils down to biological essentialism, because it's just a thing that Studio Trigger does with everything they do. They're like, yeah, you got them spiral genes. Like, what the fuck does that mean?
They're science. Trigger science.
Right, because they're basically yes, diversity is bad, because if we diversity too much, we will breed conflict in our genes. But then you kind of realize that behind that is the real message of it, which is to say there are issues that arise that a certain that people in power will use as evidence of fault in a marginalized class, and oftentimes it's a problem that they created, right? Like here's the thing about the quote unquote beastmen problem, right? Is that you realize it's only really a problem because I don't know, humans have oppressed them for centuries. Sure, you have this weird mutation thing that happens, but maybe the solution is we don't just cram all of them into one city, because we don't want the racism to happen, because it's out of sight, out of mind, right? It's oh, this is a created problem. We created this problem.
Right.
Right. And then you're oh, I see. This is the black on black crime narrative and the drug narrative. You're oh. And then you just get depressed because you're oh.
Reality. Oh.
Sad. But yeah, anyway, BNA absolutely slaps. The animation is just
good God, the animation, the color design, just all of it is so freaking gorgeous.
It's so good all the way through. It's directed by the animation director is Yo Yoshinari, who did the direction for Little Witch Academia too.
Yep. And
yeah, you can definitely feel his style come through. He, I think, has the most energy in that entire studio. And it's great, honestly. Not only is the animation just amazing, right? I swear to God, Studio Trigger shows just get better and better and better and better over time. But it is so beautiful and so fluid and so fun to watch, just constantly, just oh my God, I just remember there was that entire episode about the Bear baseball team, and
I love that episode so much.
Yes. Also, I want a Trigger baseball anime now. I hate baseball, but I would watch a Trigger baseball anime. Anyway, the opening and ending are really good. The animation is obviously really good. The color choices are consistently really, really good. They don't stick to hard realistic color palettes. They will oftentimes just hard change the color to the color and the lighting depending on the mood, and they strike it really well, I think. BNA is a visual treat. It is always super pretty, always so good to watch. The BGM is by Mabanua, who did the music for a couple of shows at this point, actually, but notably, he did the music for Megalobox, which was
Yes.
really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, as a story, it flows together fairly well. Like, there's kind of all this stuff. There is a the character designer, I think. Or I talked about this when we talked about this, but it's the character designer or the like art director, who is actually from like the West Coast of America, and
I believe it's the character designer.
yeah, okay, that's what I thought, and the ending is directed by her, and it's
Yes.
really really pretty,
Yeah.
and the music is so good. You don't understand. The opening slaps so hard, and the ending is just chef's kiss. Mwah. I would listen to the ending on repeat, just like driving for like hours if I could, right? Like that's how good it is. Oh, delicious, so good.
Yeah.
Like it. I tell you what, the vibes, they're just so good.
I think this show is definitely worth checking out, even if you've never really been overly fond of Trigger. Like, this definitely is a Trigger show. It has its Triggerisms, but overall, it's just visually, and then also the audio, the animation, like all of it is really well put together.
Yeah,
it's a really well done show overall.
You have Hosea voicing the male lead, who is delicious. I love his voice so much. What a sexy man.
Yeah.
Oh, and then there's that whole thing about having becoming suddenly aware of your of the kind of prejudice against a marginalized class, because you suddenly become part of that marginalized class, which might come to some as like slightly problematic, but personally I think it's really interesting, especially in a Japanese context, because I mean Japan has this very and I've definitely mentioned this before, but Japan has this like really kind of notable attitude towards people who are mixed race, and becoming aware of or having signifiers of your mixed race come up can, I assume, possibly be quite the harrowing experience if you've kind of lived your life assuming, well, like we're all just Japanese people, right? And then suddenly people are racist towards you, and you're like, wait, shit, this sucks. So that's kind of my thoughts about BNA in a nutshell. We covered a lot of them in the sampler, I remember, so I don't really feel the need to go over them too much more. The rest of the show is really really great. If you miss that trigger nonsense, you will get it in the final episode. I promise. I really do. Anyway, the real problem is capitalism.
Well,
didn't think I'd get there, did ya?
Thanks, man.
Yep. Let's talk about Tower of God, an anime that is not plagued by the problems of capitalism.
But isn't it though? I'm sure you'd find a way to loop it all the way back to capitalism.
Weirdly, I think this is the one that I can't.
Really?
Yeah, so
I think if I gave you a prompt and told you,
if you gave me time and a prompt and like $5, I would. But
yeah, I mean, you're an English lit major, like you could make it work.
I mean, that's very true. I don't know. Tower of God, I think, is more in line with like feudalism, though, is the thing.
No, that's fair.
Right. So Tower of God is an adaptation, an anime adaptation of a manhwa of the same name that has been running for quite a long time, and it's pretty good, I would say. Pretty good overall.
I have not read the manhwa, but the anime is pretty solid. I did not take offense to it, really.
Yeah. I think that the problems of Tower of God, the anime, are very easily attributable to the problems of Tower of God, the manhwa. And most of those are like writing issues and pacing issues. Like, it's very, very slow. Like, Tower of God is pretty difficult to get into. As interesting as the first episode is, the rest of it is like pretty slow overall, like pacing wise. I mean, things happen for sure, just often enough for you to stay interested if you are following along. But I can see how easily one can get lost if you just like don't really know anything about the manhwa. And there's a lot to it, right? It's like it's a very complicated, like deep series. It's I mentioned this before, but right, it's like the Korean Hunter x Hunter.
It oh my god, it is so Hunter x Hunter. Like, out of all of the anime influences that you could see in this series, Hunter x Hunter is definitely the strongest. The
Yeah, yeah.
entire premise of it and the entire first, I want to say, like, arc, or I guess that they cover in this first season, is like two Hunter x Hunter arcs put together. There's an exam arc and a tower arc that's in Hunter x Hunter that this series just puts together.
Yeah, pretty much. I will say this. I think it's actually quite impressive how much of the manhwa they fit in, because I'm fairly certain that the point that they left off in the anime is chapter like 150, right?
Oh.
I'm fairly certain it's around chapter 150 that that episode happens. Yeah. I don't know. How did you feel about it overall as somebody who didn't really read the manhwa or know anything about it? Because I'd be interested to hear.
Right. I mean, overall, I didn't experience too much of the drag, I guess, that you might get from the manhwa, especially considering that it was 100 chapters in or whatever. Like, it didn't feel like it would be 100 chapters in. But I guess, like, a lot of that had to do with the way that the anime studio decided to pace out the story, and maybe they glossed over a bunch of stuff, or they crammed it all together, I don't know. There were points at which, like, it felt like I was getting a bit lost. I don't know if it was because my investment in the situation was low, or I didn't understand the events going on, even though the events overall is like, hey, we're just trying to climb the tower and overcome each challenge that is presented to us. But I feel like sometimes my investment in the actual challenge or them overcoming it was quite low.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it just kind of like felt a lot of times like, oh, well, of course they're going to proceed. Like, they're just going to, it's just a matter of who's going to get taken out during this round. Like, that's about it. But
yeah. I will, and the thing about Tower of God too, right, is that I will say that it's not necessarily that interesting until what happens in the last episode, because that's the point at which you're like, wait, what?
Right.
Huh?
Yeah,
Oh.
I did like the last, I guess, bit of the anime that they concluded on, and that whole emotional arc, like the juxtaposition between the action stuff and the emotional arc that Bomb was going through with Rachel.
Yeah.
That felt good to me. I was like, okay, I'm back in it. I feel invested once again. But before that, it had been a series of action challenges and a lot less heavy on the emotional bits.
I think
that
yeah. I think
I mean,
that
I understand
you're
why
right.
they did it, but yeah.
What I think you're right though is it takes a little while for the manhwa itself to kind of find its footing, and from what I recall, the events that kind of come after the last episode of the anime as is right now are more interesting than the first part. Like,
yeah,
it always feels like the first part is like kind of the lead up, and then you get to the like betrayal scene and you're like, oh,
right,
cool,
right.
I'm in now. Yeah. I really hope we get a new season, actually.
I do too.
As soon as possible, because I really hope more people get into it. I love Tower of God. I obviously haven't kept up with it over the recent years, but like, there's a lot to like about it. I mean, if you like Hunter x Hunter, you will probably like this.
You will probably like this. I will not lie to you.
I will say that the animation is technically very proficient.
Yes,
but it is...
I quite liked the animation style.
Yeah, but much of it is I think almost all of it is like limited animation. There's not like a ton of Sakura shots is what I noticed. Like, even in the middle of the fight scenes, it's very much like I'm watching like Naruto, where like action is happening at the same pace that the rest of the show happens at.
Right.
And that might diminish your enjoyment of it somewhat, especially if you're coming off of like very recent anime that is like not that, like, to be fair, you know, right.
Yeah, no, I definitely, now that you've said it, I think that's what it was, is
Mm-hmm.
that is that type of pacing issue. Even though the show overall didn't necessarily have a pacing issue for me, but I didn't feel the same like push and pull that I would if I was
Yeah,
watching
yeah.
Hunter x Hunter.
It's
Uh
very,
yeah.
very like monotonous in its pacing. It's very one
Right,
tone.
yeah. Yes, yes.
You're absolutely not. You're absolutely correct. Everything happens at like everything seems to happen at the same weight, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So like, I totally get that. I totally get that.
Yeah, and I think that's why the last part stuck out to me, is because that felt like it had a lot more weight, and there was a lot
Right.
more like uh a lot more dramatic dips and whatnot.
It also in all fairness, it also until that moment, it's a little bit difficult to make out the central motivations of the lead characters, right? Because you
Yeah,
obviously have
that's true. Hmm.
right. So the thing about Tower of God, right, is the reason it takes so long to get into is because until you know episode like 13 or whatever, however many episodes there were, um, it doesn't like while you kind of understand the surface motivations of the characters, you don't really come to terms with it until that moment where Rachel like pushes Palm like off
Yeah.
the thing,
Yeah,
because
you're
then
right.
suddenly all of the build up there
Yeah.
has a ton of weight to it, where you're
Yeah.
like,
Hmm.
oh, like because it's the first like real, I will say, like character moment where like
Yeah.
they both become their own characters, and not
Right.
just kind of like, we want to climb the tower, etc., right? Like you see the lengths to which Rachel will go to climb the tower, and you see the trust that Bam puts in her, um and you see the way that changes once that moment happens, and that makes for interesting character drama, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That makes for interesting character motivation. Suddenly it
Hmm.
goes from like a quite generic shonen action to, oh, there's something happening here.
Yeah.
And I'll say, like, you don't really know what the deal with the rest of the characters is, aside from Rack, who is just there to be strong. Which I love him for.
Chocolate, be
I
strong.
I love Rack. He's one of my favorite characters. My one of my first D&D characters actually was based on him. Because I was just so I mean, I was a nerd, right? But I also just really enjoyed character who is strong because I want to be strong.
Hmm.
I will climb tower because I wanted to be strong. That kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and it's this is one of the Crunchyroll kind of like sponsored produced like
Yeah.
anime that's coming out
Yeah.
of webtoons, and that's like
Yeah.
super exciting
That is
because
really exciting.
we haven't really gotten that. And this
Hmm.
season we have God of High School, which
Yep.
is really good.
Yeah.
Like the
I've been enjoying
animation
it.
is
Yep.
chef's kiss,
Hmm.
delicious. So I'm very on board with this, right?
Yeah, I think it's awesome that they've decided to strike up this partnership and get animations made,
I
because
mean,
it's
as long
introducing.
as you have the resources, sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. But it is kind of bringing the anime audience and the webtoon audience together. Like, there are people who watch anime that don't read webtoons, and so they don't know about these series.
Right.
Yeah, so that's really cool.
And now the only thing that Crunchyroll needs to do is pay its translators.
Wow.
Shots fired. Yep. Let's talk about My Next Life as a Villainess. All routes lead
Yeah.
to doom.
Yeah.
I, for one, welcome our new isekai overlords.
I mean, you already been on that train.
I know, I have. And I do obviously have a lot of thoughts about isekai as a power fantasy genre, and as a fulfillment of I will say like a male-oriented fantasy, but also the recreation of capitalist power in another world, aka colonialism.
Capitalism.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's like when you think about isekai, really, you read a bunch of isekai, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm like bored, I want to read some isekai, and then you're like, by the like fourth or fifth time that the main character is like taking slaves, you're like, hold up, what? Like you don't have to make a world where, and like this is obviously one of those things about like clumsy racial allegory, right? It's like, yes, beastmen are always discriminated against. It's always beastmen, always
Yeah.
beastmen, you know, because that, how else are we gonna make like an easy like animal people like shot anyway, the way, but yeah, you it's like, I will take slaves, but I will be a good slave owner. It's like, no, stop it! How about you just dismantle slavery? I don't understand. Why is this part of your fantasy? Well, I know why, but anyway. So my next life as a villainess is not that. Villainous isekai as a genre. We probably won't talk about this too much, aside from how much we absolutely adored this show because it's so charming. Which we did. We love this show. It's very charming.
Yeah, it remains charming all the way through. It doesn't like take any kind of hard turn in terms of like it's a soap opera mess.
It's very straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you like the beginning episodes, then you'll probably like the whole series because it doesn't ever stray too far from that. And I think that's perfectly fine because the original, like the concept and premise of it all is very wholesome and entertaining.
Yeah. It's how do I say this? It's pleasantly homosexual.
Maybe. Well, it's bisexual, I guess, right?
I mean, yes. Yes. It is so it's kind of funny actually because it's so on the nose about the like about the love everybody has for the main character.
Yes.
In like such explicit ways.
There's no like subtext where you have to like dissect what people are like, their glances, the way that they say things in allegory or whatever. Not
right. It's not eye sparkles. Like, it's like, I want to be your wife. Exactly.
It's I love you and I only want to be with you. These other people can go get hecked.
Yeah. I very much enjoy that we've reached this point where like they don't need to kiss to know that it's gay because they're just gonna say it with their mouths in explicit terms, and they do.
I've been waiting my whole life.
Thank you, Jesus, for the equal opportunity harem. That's all I'm gonna say. Villainous isekai is very cute and charming, and I might have mentioned this before, but like I think it's very cool that as a kind of genre it's more centered around empathy and rehabilitation than it is around doing violence real good to live your peaceful pastoral life built on the backs of violence.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that there is kind of this one of the more interesting things was the kind of like little cut in with her friend from the other life who she was definitely gay for.
Oh my god, dude, that episode. I wasn't expecting the feelings.
Yeah, there was some surprising feels. Also, they hold hands in the opening every episode, so like I don't know what to tell you. The show's already gay. Sorry, it belongs to us. But yeah, like can we talk about how nice it is that like people like her because she has a nice personality and that she's nice to people. Like, she's kind of an idiot. She eats a lot of food. She doesn't understand, like, social cues or how people are, you know, expressing their undying affection for her. Right? As opposed to, like, as opposed to a, like this is it, right? Where, in this villainous isekai, it's a lot more about how one makes relationships than it is about unequal power dynamics. Where like a lot of isekai is about like, well, people like this guy because he's really strong and he does things for people for free, but essentially like it's just a person giving other people things. You become a sugar daddy. You're not really, you know, you're a fantasy sugar daddy. And in Villainous, it's much more about like, well, like this person is really important to me because they're like really nice and they've, you know, kind of committed themselves to involving themselves in my issues even though they don't have to, etc., 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 that kind of stuff. Like the girl eats muffins off the floor. You know, how could you not fall in love with that?
She kind of a mess.
She kind of a mess, but that's what we love about her.
Yeah, no, she's a very charming person to be the lead of this show, and in a very funny way. And I think that's what makes it really enjoyable.
Yeah, no, it's just
And
a very nice show.
It's very nice. People just love her, and you're like, all right, I'm rooting for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
Let's talk about Princess Connect then.
Kokodo
Princess Connect Redive. It's kind of frustratingly good. And I say this like not out of any spite for the show, because I think it's wonderful and charming. I love the setup of it. I love the idea of the Gourmet Guild. The characters are all super nice and charming and adorable, and I love that the way that they build relationships with each other. I love Carol as a character who reluctantly comes to see this ragtag group as her family, because you know I'm a sucker for that trope.
Mm-hmm.
But it does mean that Grand Blue Fantasy is the worst Cygames property anime out of all of them, and there's like 4 of them.
Yeah.
So it's like, guys, make a good anime for your flagship product. I beg of you. You can clearly do it.
No.
It's so frustrating.
They just have to make the captain in Grand Blue a baby, and then that's the formula.
I mean, he's a baby, but he's a different kind of baby, so...
Yeah. No, they need to make him, like,
actually
this kind of baby.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what can I say about Princess Connect? It's a wonderful adaptation of a game.
Yeah.
It's... Mm-hmm.
I didn't really expect to like it as much as I did, and then it kept being more and more likable as the series went on. And I was stunned because I just thought it would be your typical isekai game thing, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think part of it is like they play it very straight, but they also like have some fun with it for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? It is eminently pleasant to watch because they kind of know what, like, that the show is like an advertisement for the game, but at the same time they're willing to I'm pretty sure I said this when we started watching it, but it feels like if Konosuba was like it's like nice Konosuba.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I would say so. It's a very nice Konosuba because no one here is like trash tier overlord. You know, they're
no
all
one is a
trying
degenerate.
to be nice to each other. Yeah, like even the girl who was like working for the bad guy and was supposed to be scheming or whatever ends up being she's unable to be mean to these people.
Yeah.
Like she has to be nice to them, and that's
because they're nice to her.
Yeah, exactly, because they're so nice to her. Whereas Konosuba, it's just a hot garbage fire.
I love how much of a hot garbage fire it is. But yeah, the thing about like Princess Connect 2 is like it's actually pretty funny. Like,
yeah,
in terms of comedy beats, they actually hit a lot of the same ones as Konosuba does. Just not necessarily at the like expense of the characters like dunking on each other. It's more like the characters playing into their flaws or their weaknesses in comedic ways. Like the fact that the main character just keeps getting carried away by monsters and eaten.
Yes.
Right?
I remember being so shocked when he actually did a quest by himself.
Yeah!
Like, what a proud moment in the series when
You're
the
like,
man actually did something by himself and
I'm so proud.
succeeded.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really, it's just nice. Listen, this is like the comfort media I really need in this time. Like, I cannot overstate how much like comfort this brings me. It's so good. It's so nice. I wish I could watch like 4 idiots adventuring for the rest of time. Because that's how I feel about Konosuba too. I'm just like, I wish I could watch these idiots adventure for the rest of time.
Yeah.
And it has really like nice moment. And this is the thing about like good comedy too, is that good comedy can, if it's done well, good comedy can easily pivot into emotional payout, because when you have things that you don't necessarily take seriously but are based on character interactions and character personalities, right? Like a lot of jokes are about how kind of over the top Pecorine is as a character. And then in the like last episode, you realize that it's because she's covering up for the fact that, you know, something has caused her parents not to remember her or anyone to remember that she's a princess. And that has like kind of suddenly you're like, oh, I have to grapple with the emotional weight of a character who is like really like touchy and like hugging everybody all the time. And you realize it's because she doesn't want people to forget her. And you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, no. I'm invested.
Panic.
Yeah, and you know, you have a character like Carol who is supposed to be like a spy for the bad guy, and she does that to some extent, but she realizes how much she cares about the people around her, how much they care about her, how much like the person she's serving doesn't really care about her or other people, and how much she doesn't want to hurt people, and overall kind of how ineffectual she is as a spy, really. Like how much does she actually do as a bad guy? Not that much, right? No. But yeah, that's kind of it though. Is like great comedy is built on the back of good characterization, which is what Konosuba understands, and what it understands beyond that. And this is what the Cautious Hero show also kind of gets right, which is that you can easily pivot that into emotional payout if you execute it well. If you want to, like, they're already invested because they've been laughing along with these characters for like 12 episodes. If you suddenly turn the table and you're like, it's drama now, people get it. They're like, oh, I care about these characters, because, you know, it's kind of funny. It's almost like a shortcut, because like nowadays it's very hard, I think, to build characters that are that have motivations that are like commonplace, but not have them feel cliched, right? If somebody's like, I want to avenge my parents, unless you do that exquisitely well, you're like, whatever, get over it, Sasuke. But when you have comedy, you're unintentionally becoming attached to these characters and the comedy that they produce, and when things start happening that are dramatic, you're like, oh shit, I care a lot, actually.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, obviously part of that is building endearing characters, but it can kind of pivot into being quite compelling drama, and I think Princess Connect gets that pretty good. I think they get that quite right. I love the framing of the last episode. I love how it starts like very quiet and eventually goes into like the grand crescendo of like the final climax moment, where like they're all putting their powers together. It's like the final episode of like season 2 of Konosuba, where you're like, they're doing it, they're working together, and you feel so good inside. You're like, my children, they're working together. They got this.
They got their acts together. Yay.
Yeah. So, Princess Connect was absolute shocker for how good it is. It's so good. It's so good. Highly recommend. If you want a fantasy show, watch not Konosuba. Watch Princess Connect.
I mean, you could also watch Konosuba.
Watch
it's just
Konosuba
a very different take
also.
on it.
Yeah.
One of these is a lot more wholesome than the other.
Yeah, I mean, if they ever release Princess Knight in English, I might have to play it. That's a problem. Uh-oh.
Haha. More gacha.
I don't want to play more gacha. It's consuming my life. Also, I don't remember when the last time we talked was, but I finished Unlimited Blade Works. It's really good.
Oh, okay, good. Congratulations.
Sorry, that just came to me out of the blue, completely unrelated to anything we were talking about. Anyway, let's talk about the next anime. Let's go.
All right, the next one is the one that I watched that you did not. Woodpecker Detective's Office.
The show that started wild and only got weirder.
All right, so I finished it, and it very solidly, if I were to sum it up, falls into the Bungo Stray Dogs category of very interesting premise with such a middle of the ground mediocre execution. And of course it's centered around writers and poets, just like Bungo Stray Dogs. So the core premise of the show is actually based on this real life friendship between these two people, Kindaichi and Ishikawa, who actually did go around solving a series of murders while they were living in the same town together. And I think that is super cool, right? That's a really neat premise. However, the show tries so very hard to pay homage to these characters in a way that just felt very performative. Like the fact that they have these people mentioning poetry all the time to such a way that, like, he's always reciting poems, and then his friend is always like, hey man, I love your mind because you're such a great poet, and they do this constantly. And it doesn't need to be done that much, you know what I mean? Like, if he's a good poet, he's a good poet. You don't need to keep railing it home. And the one point where it felt natural was like towards the end of the whole series, where where Ishikawa the poet is struggling to write this like poetry anthology, and he ends up just writing a poem about Kindaichi who gets drunk, and he explains that poetry is just his way of capturing like these tiny little sparks of life around him and try to give them form. And that kind of falls in line with how the real life Ishikawa, his poetry was known to be very articulate in how he made very in how he put words to daily observations that he made, right? He did it in such a beautiful way that people were captivated by that. Mm-hmm. But then everything else felt so forced, the way that they made this man recite his own goddamn poetry all the goddamn time. And so the other part that really bothered me is that the emotional beats for this show just don't really land. Like, there were times where it felt like they were delivering it very seriously, but it ended up being a comedic moment. But something about it didn't, like, they missed it, either some kind of musical cue or the way that they delivered the humor just went over my head. And I don't know if it's because it is meant to be more of a period piece, that it, you know, it doesn't cater to modern sensibilities, you know what I mean? But then there's also the fact that it doesn't carry any kind of emotional investments. Like, it inconsistently carries them, right? So I told you about how Ishikawa framed Kindaichi for murder during the first 3 episodes, and then they don't carry any kind of emotional weight of those consequences after that. They just kind of move on with their friendship after that.
Okay.
And then later on in the show, they start bickering or whatever, and you would think that that would be more paired with the fact that my man's framed his friend for murder, but there were no consequences. Okay. And then later on, they do have consequences for other things, and so it doesn't make any sense to me tonally. There's no consistency for me. And and it's very like ham-fisted in certain tonal shifts too. Like towards the end, they start making it very obvious that Ishikawa, the poet, is sick. And real life Ishikawa, he had tuberculosis, and so in the anime they start showing this man's coughing up blood like all the time. In every episode, they have a shot of him in the last like 3 or 4 episodes where he's looking down at his hand after coughing and there's blood in it. How many times do they need to show this?
I see. Yeah, you think you would get it.
And I cannot tell you how quickly it shifted between him looking normal and him looking like a goddamn zombie. Like, immediately. Just one episode to another. And I was like, this... Where's my gradual build to anything? I don't know, man. And, I guess the last nail in the coffin for me was the fact that the mysteries themselves, because this is a murder mystery show, they weren't very intriguing. They weren't like head scratchers or anything. There was literally, the last episode was the kind of solution where they hid a clue from the audience that only the protagonist saw and knew about. And that's such a big no-no. Yeah. Like,
that's not how you write a murder mystery.
Exactly.
Looking at you, BBC Sherlock.
Basically, the culprit was supposed to be someone who had smashed a stained glass window, and the main character confronts this girl who was actually his landlord. He says, "You're the one who did it, and I noticed this because your shoes have little stained glass shards in them, and I noticed that when you ran out of here." But they don't show that to the audience. And so...
Yikes.
And also the fact that she's 14 years old, I was like, what? She's the main bad guy that you've been talking about this entirety of the show. Like, this was the climactic mystery, where in the beginning, you remember when we were watching it together, they had that first mystery where they didn't really solve it. He just said that there was a possibility that someone else did it.
Right.
And he faked some evidence to kind of prove that point. She was the one who had orchestrated the whole thing. Like, she orchestrated all these people to murder someone and then take their own lives, and then she would kind of write letters and forge evidence in such a way that it made their suicides into social justice causes. And she's 14.
I see.
And yeah, so that I don't know about this show, man. Like, I think it had a lot of potential, and it didn't carry out any of it in a way that was likable to me. Maybe I'm being like way too harsh on it, or maybe it's just not, maybe I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't like it. I had no emotional investment in the characters either, because they were framing each other for murder, and there's no consequences. Yeah. So that's that show.
Yowza.
I would be interested in hearing if Brandon ever watches it and he has
You
things to say
can't do
about
that to him.
Listen, he spent like an hour destroying Kabukicho Sherlock.
You can't do that to him.
I feel like I need that for this show.
You know he would watch it.
But he would articulate maybe why I.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like you got the gist of it. Bad at character, bad at mystery, bad at anime.
Yeah. I guess so. I would say that.
Yeah. I mean, it really is kind of inexcusable for a mystery show to have bad mysteries if you're not also gonna have like you can either have it be focused on the mystery, which is fine. You can have it be focused on the characters, which is also fine. But if you're not gonna do either really well, then it's pretty damning. Pretty damning.
Exactly. Correct.
Yeah. Like, there better be something redeeming about your mystery show if you really want to make one, and it's pretty clear that there.
Right. It felt like they had wanted to build it on the fact that it's based around these real life writers and poets and their friendship together. But when you kill any kind of investment you have in their friendship because one of them is such a royal douchebag to the other one, you don't know why you should be invested in these two because you're just thinking the whole time, why are they friends? They should stop being friends. They're awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So I have a hard time recommending the show, but if you like it, then please inform me so that I may gain a new perspective on the show, maybe.
I don't think you're gonna get any mail in about that one. I think that's gonna be a nah.
Please write me a letter.
Right. It has to be a handwritten letter. You have to put it in an envelope and wax seal it, and then you can send it off. You have to make sure that the USPS doesn't die by then, because that's what the government is trying to do now. So, all those things. Anyway, shall we wrap up?
Yeah, that's all I had to say about that, and I think that's all the anime that we watched for the season.
That is,
yeah,
which is kind of amusing. The coming season is going to be even sparser. So that'll be quite fun. But that's just what we do. That's just what we have to live with. In this day and age. So yeah. Why don't we wrap up?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember which order we do this in anymore, so I'm just gonna start literally anywhere. I know. Who are you? Do we have anything that
you got doing? It. That's how we do. I am
You'll
Renu.
note that it's been about a month since we recorded our last episode. This monthly schedule has made it a lot harder to remember what our routines are.
Oh my god. You could find me on Twitter and Tumblr and Twitch at Swandron. You could find me on Instagram at swan.dron. I'm still playing through Okami. I feel like I'm in the last third of the game. Last time we recorded, I thought that I was at the end, and I'm not, and I'm just a fool, so... yeah, no, we're getting there towards the end. I feel it because we're actually revealing some character backstory, and we haven't done that this entirety of the whole game.
Jesus Christ. It's really surprising to me that you're still playing this game.
Yeah, no, I'm having a great time though. The chat is being really gracious and fun while I throw myself into this 200-hour game. Yeah. So if you want to see that, come on by.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you, bud?
You can find me all places at Literal Soup. I'm honestly I'm a little quiet right now. Not much going on. There's stuff still in the works. Obviously I've been working on some unannounced projects for certain things. Of which I'm contributing some writing to. I'm trying to get together a Patreon post for my personal Patreon to have by the end of the month. Because I've been doing some restructuring about the Patreon, considering, one, I can't go outside really, and two, ramen kind of sucks when you take it out, and three, I don't know. I've just been interested in doing some other stuff because, I don't need to give Wizards of the Coast any more money. Listen, I've already bought like 3 of their like $60 books or whatever.
Bro,
I play their game all the fucking time, and they did not treat my friend Orion very well. So kind of sours the experience a little bit. But
oh no, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, so kind of all that stuff going on. But anyway, I'm trying to pivot my Patreon to some other stuff because there are some other things that I would be interested in doing. It has so far been more of a our little writing commission Patreon, but I actually really like it to be like support me for doing a project that I'm interested in. Essentially writing essays, which is funny because I got out of school and I was like, I'll never write an essay again. And like a year later, I'm sitting here like, man, I really miss writing essays.
That's how it is.
But yeah, so that's what I'll be doing.
Okay.
I might have something up by the end of the month. Hopefully, if my brain allows me to. I don't know. I've been I don't know what it is. It might be any number of things, but I've been feeling kind of lethargic lately.
Ah.
And I might have expressed as much in the last episode that we did, but I just want to sleep all the time. You know, I don't want to think about what's happening on this planet, this husk of an Earth. But I do want to write an essay, which is kind of weird. I never thought I'd get to that point in my life. But yeah, so keep an eye out for that. It might go up by the end of the month on my WordPress page. So
That's cool. Nice.
Leave a link to that.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out on that. That's kind of all I'm up to. There's really nothing kind of interesting for me going on anymore. At least not for a while. Other than the moving thing, but you know. So it goes. I'll have to live. It's funny because I've been living essentially apart from my parents for a couple months at this point, like 3 or 4 months, and it's been so nice. And back to my parents I go.
Woo!
That's just how it goes. All right. Well, why don't we wrap up the rest of this stuff? Our opening is by Scotty Network, and our ending is by Takuma Kara. Definitely check them out because they're really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
And the patrons we have to thank this month are Frostfall, Cheru, Sean, Gwen, Claire, Figure 4, and Magpie Mirror Test. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your support. We obviously could not make the podcast without you. I hope.
Yeah.
I hope it's been good. I know there's been a lot of scheduling issues and infrequent episode updates and all kinds of stuff we're messing with on the podcast here. But yeah, I hope you enjoy. The next episode, like next proper episode, should be about Villainess Isekai. So
Dun, dun, dun.
keep an ear out for that one. It's mostly why we didn't talk super in depth about Villainess Isekai this time, because we definitely want to bring it up during the episode.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, I think we will see you next time.
Woo! See you next time.
Dun, 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 dun.
Sayonara. また明日ね。